It's time to get the story behind the story. Interviews with newsmakers, news breakers, and Vermonters making a difference. WCAX presents 802 News with Mark Johnson. Here's Mark.
Filmmaker Bess O'Brien tackles difficult topics in her documentaries: substance abuse, eating disorders, domestic violence, the foster care system, the transition from prison back into the community, just to name a few. Her latest film is no exception. In Just Getting By, O'Brien interviews Vermonters struggling with not having enough food and a place to live. The film is profound, moving, heartbreaking, and at times uplifting as individuals and communities work to help those in need. The honesty, dignity, and resiliency of those who share their story is remarkable, including many who've participated in the state's controversial hotel-motel voucher program. In this edition of 802 News, sponsored by Red Hen Baking Company, O'Brien talks about why she takes on such challenging topics, why so many Vermonters are facing food and housing insecurity, and what they're doing to survive day to day. Just Getting By is touring the state from March 22nd through April 12th, beginning this Friday and Saturday evening at Main Street Landing Arts Center in Burlington. For a full list of showings, go to Kingdom County Productions at kingdomcounty.org. Seeing the film will not only open your eyes, but also likely your heart. Let's start with the movies that you make. These are uncomfortable movies.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you do that?
Well, I think that I'm really interested in hearing from people who we don't usually hear from. People always ask me, how do you get these people to tell their stories? These are really intense stories. Some people, there's a lot of shame around a lot of these issues. Some of these stories are heartbreaking. I find that most people that I talk to want to tell their stories, but we just don't ask them. We want to know every single thing about Beyonce, and I love Beyonce, but we don't want to know about the guy who's living down the street that we may see occasionally who's, working 3 shifts at the Walmart and, the custodian at the local hospital, okay? To me, these are issues that are often unseen, invisible, but that are going on below the radar all the time, even in a very progressive state like Vermont. And I guess, over 25 years of me making films on all kinds of different issues, what I hope my films do is illuminate those issues and create a conversation for people to learn about them and share with their neighbors and maybe even do something about it. I think that, it's very easy for us to, and my son is a journalist, so I have nothing against journalism, but when you read a quick story or you see a 20-second ad for homelessness or whatever, it comes, it goes, you're sort of, that's a bummer, whatever. But if you have to sit through an hour and a half of being hopefully glued to the screen where you're really connecting with folks who are different than you and going through their stories, and frankly, you come out of it with some empathy, I think that can change people. Is it going to change the world? No, but I think that does move people forward a little bit in their thinking and their overall sense of what this issue is about, whether it's homelessness, food insecurity, foster care, drug addiction, whatever, all these different movies I've made. So, and I frankly love shooting. The shooting and the interviewing is my favorite part. Just being with these people, discovering these people. You saw this movie that I just made, Just Getting By. There are fabulous characters. Yeah. I could have made 10 different movies, feature films on just some of the characters just in the movie that we see for 10 minutes. So discovering these people is really exciting. It's sort of like being an anthropologist, and I like doing that.
There's a lot of pride these people have, too.
Yeah,
that really
absolutely.
Comes through.
Absolutely. There's pride, there's dignity, there's resilience. One of the things that in this film that just blew my mind is, how people live on so little. How do you do that? How does a family of 5 live on $25,000 a year? How do you do that? How do you feed your family? Coming from any kind of privileged place, that is just astounding. And these people get up every day and try to figure it out. The stress is intense. Yeah. The insecurity is intense. Wondering if you're going to be in the hotel 2 months from now, where you're going to get kicked out, wondering if somebody's going to buy the house that you're renting, so you're not going to be able to keep your family there. I mean, these are all things that many of us don't even think about for 2 seconds. Wondering, how am I going to, I've run out of money, I only have $10 left, there's one more week to buy food. How do I buy food for my family for this last week? Well, I guess I won't eat dinner. I'll give it, I'll make dinner for the kids, and then I'll have some potato chips. I mean, these are things that people need to know about, that folks are dealing with every day.
And the stress is just ongoing. It's not that's the thing that really struck me. You talk about the hotel program and how there are these constantly moving deadlines. So you get a reprieve, but you're not out of the woods.
That's right. Yeah. One of the things that happened last winter that really was an aha moment for me is that my husband and I came home one night in March, actually a year ago this time. Our pipe had broken and half of our house was streaming with water, and our house was just a total disaster. I mean, we had to gut half the house. The house was completely upended. Jay and I were, literally living in one tiny room at the top of the house. I didn't have a kitchen. I was eating in the bathroom. My cat was going crazy. I couldn't find my furniture, was piled up in a corner. And I thought to myself, wow, okay, this feels very, this makes me feel very insecure, because at the end of the day, after you've had a hard day, or you've worked 3 jobs, or you've worked any job, or you've done anything, you'd want to come home to a place that you feel at home, that you can relax, that you can generate yourself, right? And I would come home during this period of time when my house was a mess, and there was no place for me to do that. There was no resting place at the end of the day, and I was like, wow, okay, this is what this
Every
must
day.
feel like.
Yeah.
A lot, which is, I don't really know, and a lot of the people who are living in the hotels, I mean, thank God they're living in the hotel because they're not on the street. But, half their clothes are in some storage place, and where, they're putting their food in their closet. And that's the kind of stuff I was doing during this 2-month period where my house was being totally renovated. And I was like, this is driving me crazy, because you don't feel grounded. You don't feel connected. And so those are the stresses we don't even think about, that people are dealing with. Forget the fact that I need to get a job, or my kid's sick, or how do I get childcare? It's just like, where is my home? Where do I lay my head so I have some sort of sense of rejuvenation at the end of the day?
We're here in Burlington. There's an awful lot of people that are living out on the street here. And I think one of the things that I found profound watching this is this sort of us versus them mentality that gets created, or the other. And I walk downtown and I see people and I have no idea who they are. And I felt after watching your movie that I had a better understanding and knew who some of these people were.
I mean, what I tried to do with this film, and I try to do with most of my films, is to have diversity, so that, because I think a lot of times we're like, oh, well, we know who those people are who don't have housing. We know what homeless people look like. We know what their problem is. We know what they've done in their past. We know how they got there. A lot of judgment, or just stereotype, right? We know who the people are who go to the food banks. And if you look at this film, Just Getting By, there is an arc of people, literally people who are living in a tent, all the way through people who have a family who are working 2 jobs and barely getting by, all the way from the nurse who's 72 years old in my movie, who has worked her entire life. And
Fern.
Yeah. Fern, who is just pissed off, man, because she's 72 and she can't afford food to feed herself. I mean, what's that about? I have worked my entire life. Why isn't my country taking care of me? Why don't I have the ability to buy food, So I think in the film, you see people that you cannot deny or judge. The last line in the movie is, we are not burdens, we are people.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down. We're not burdens, we're people. Yeah.
And I mean, I think that just says it all.
Yeah.
I mean, we can, slough off these people and create judgment around there, but let's have some compassion, people. Like, can we have a little bit of compassion? These are human beings that are living around us.
Let's take a listen to Linda and Fern.
I've been working since I was 12 years old. I did not anticipate ending my life, the golden years, struggling.
I really would like to be able to be happy and comfortable at the end of my life. And I can't do that. I have to every day worry. My Social Security started me out at $600 a month. I had to start going to the food shelves. I got food stamps because I had only $11 left a month after I paid my bills.
I'm an old Vermonter. What can I say? I pay my bills first. What's left over, you hope nothing breaks, and then you figure out how much you've got for food.
I have a list of groceries that I get every single month. It went from $83 to $164. The same identical amount of food. I only eat 2 meals a day now. And I'm a diabetic, and I'm supposed to be eating 6.
I bought a little piece of ham, that packaged ham, and I've managed to get 3 meals out of that. Age and lack of money takes just about any pleasure in life away. I used to like going to plays. I used to like going to the movies. I used to like to go on vacation. I love going to the ocean.
And I would take my camper and go and stay for a week, months. I would go to Freiburg Fair. I can't do any of that anymore. My jeans are 7 years old. I can't even buy myself a pair of jeans. I can't afford it.
Something major happens. That's it. I don't have any means to come back from that. We're the ones that fought for this country. We're the ones that have worked and provided. Why do we have to end our lives like this? It's the futility of not having a solution, not having a soft place to fall. Sometimes I just could sit here and say, I just want to die.
I have just worked my butt off all my life. And I'm not taking it. I thank the good Lord every day. But I just feel sometimes that life is not fair.
I do want to get back to the ocean once before I die.
How and why are we at that point in this country?
Well, I mean, I could go on a whole diatribe. I mean, I think it's partly because we live in a capitalist country and we have very few national programs that really help everyone, and we need more of those. I think that there is a sense of pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and that's just the way you make it in this country. And as somebody else says in the film, that's easy to say, but there's a lot of things along the way that would hinder you from being able to do that. There are, we haven't raised the minimum wage in how many years? We don't keep up with inflation. We don't have universal health care. We don't have universal child care. I mean, these are major issues that just take people down, especially if you're old and you don't have money. God help you if you get sick, on and on and on. Where there was a whole story the other day on Vermont Public about how everybody in Vermont is aging and we really don't have the infrastructure and we really don't have the nurses and we really don't have the places for people to go and live when they get older. So I think there's a lot of wishful thinking / ignoring / this is your problem, you have to figure it out, a lot of judgment. And I think specifically in the state of Vermont around like the housing crisis, I think we have just really been remiss. I mean, as Angie Harbin says from Down Street Housing, we knew this was coming. We knew we've been behind the 8 ball for 30 years. Now it's really, now we're up against the wall. Now this is it. We're in crisis mode. But I think as far as the housing goes, I think that Vermont has ways of hopefully taking some new steps. And one of them probably is opening up Act 250 a little bit. I mean, I love Act 250. Act 250 is great. We don't want Vermont to look like New Jersey. But I think we need to, step back a little bit and take a deep breath and say, okay, if a city like Montpelier or maybe even Burlington, but, some smaller communities, downtowns, if we need to put up a 5-story building, it's okay. Like, we can do it. We can put housing in there. And we won't even know it exists 2 years later. We'll all be walking around. We don't even care. I think we need to think innovatively about housing as far as, we have all these, unfortunately, a lot of these campuses of our state universities that don't have people living in the dorms. Okay, well, maybe we can renovate those dorms. Maybe we can take some of these hotels that we have been paying $3,000 to $5,000 a month for a room, buy them and actually renovate them. Maybe we can create tiny house, communities. I think that in Burlington, they're thinking of, trying to encourage people who have some land around their house or who have a garage that they haven't used in a long time to make a little apartment. And maybe there should be some money to help them, renovate that garage into apartment. I mean, these are things that they're not rocket science. Like they're things, there's a lot of good ideas. And I bet, Mark, that somewhere in this country or somewhere in this world, somebody has figured out how to do this. And we need to find out how to make these things happen. And we need to really commit to them. We need to commit 10 to 20 years to these issues, not 2 years and then forget about it. Not put some money in and then take it out. Like, we have to continue to build on this vision and see it to the end. Because a lot of times you just, you get a grant, it's a 2-year grant, you get the money from COVID, it comes, it helps, it's gone, people are just left destitute again. Talk about stress. We raised how many people out of poverty during the COVID funds?
Yeah.
That was a good thing.
Yeah.
And now we're just like, sorry, back to ground zero where you were before. Wow.
That was one of the things that really struck me is there's this consistent theme throughout the movie about how things were really better during the pandemic, which sounded really odd.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because we had this money from the federal government. Where did the federal government get this money? They got it somewhere.
They printed it.
Okay? And they sent it to the states, and the states used it, okay? All of a sudden, they don't want to print it anymore. Okay. But, it's, yeah. And, as we were talking before the interview, these are the stressors that working people, low-income people deal with all the time, which is, okay, I'm going to get some help. Oh, great. I can maybe start going back to college. I can maybe get another job. I can maybe put my kid into childcare so that I can go to college or whatever it might be. And then the money and that program runs out and doesn't exist anymore. And then you're halfway through college and you can't finish college, whatever. Mm-hmm. Or, you were in this job and now you can't continue to go to the job because you have to take care of your kid and you can't afford the childcare. So how can we expect people to move forward and really make big changes in their lives in order to give back to our community, in order to be healthy members of our community that are paying taxes and doing all the stuff that we need them to do? If we just sort of put the Band-Aid on, then take it off, put the Band-Aid on, take it off, that drives people crazy. And as you see in my movie, actually some people leave. They're like, done.
Right, yeah.
Done.
Yeah, there's that one woman who moves to New Hampshire at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Who had been a very prominent spokesperson for that community.
That's right. And totally capable, hard worker, artist. She's a perfectly great person to have in the state of Vermont, and she would have paid her taxes and done good things. And because we couldn't get it together, and she got kicked out of the hotel, she just said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm going somewhere else. So we lose somebody.
And, the other thing that I thought the movie reinforced is this whole idea is how quickly circumstances can change for people.
That's right. Yeah. You get hit by a car. Frankly, you just retire. You and I were talking about, when are we going to retire?
How old we're getting.
How old we're getting. We're still so young.
We're part of becoming part of that demographic you referred to earlier. 7 Days just did this piece that 1 out of 3 people in Vermont, and and because my memory is going, in a certain number of years, 1 out of 3 people will be over the age of 60.
That's right.
That is not a good demographic.
No, it's not a good demographic. And if you've been a middle-class person or made a decent amount of money or been a nurse or a teacher or whatever, I think you look at the last 20 years of your life or the last 15 years of your life and you go, I don't think my Social Security is really going to cut it. Like, how am I going to do this? And that is, to do that to people when they are older, when they are dealing with health stuff and they should actually just be relaxing and having a good time at the end of their life, in the richest country in the world, what do we do? What are we talking about?
Yeah.
You also have in my movie Linda, who's the other older woman, and she's in a little trailer park. She's fine. She's doing okay. She worked her entire life. But she essentially says, I have barely enough to eat every week. I'm okay. But if a major medical thing happens or I have to leave this trailer park and I have to go to a residential elderly place, how the hell am I going to pay for that? I don't know. It's just, we can talk about the Scandinavian countries until the clouds come home. We can talk about more socialistic ideas. Doesn't mean that you can't have in this country, still competition and people running their own businesses and everything else, but more socialist programs that really take care of the people who have worked all their lives. What is wrong with that? As I always say, there's plenty of money in this country. It's just going in the wrong direction. And, another issue that we hear from the state is, well, we can't continue these programs because there's no money. Okay, no money, no money, no money. Meanwhile...
Which is what the Scott administration is saying about the hotel voucher program.
That's right.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, you have, I think, was it last year or the year before, hundreds, I think, or many, many wealthy Vermonters saying, please tax us more. We want to give back to the state. And the governor's like, no, we're not going to tax you. Okay. Because we're afraid some of them will leave the state. I think most of them will stay. You can tax them more money. You can use that money for good things. Wasn't there conversation this year about taxing, beverages or something? 5 cents, 10 cents. People are not going to notice. They're not going to notice this stuff. And it could go to supporting these programs and to these people. I also think that there's this narrative, that some people it's like a broken record, which is, well, all these people just use the system. They're lazy. They're drug addicts. They like getting all of these, living in a hotel and not working all day and just getting subsidy from the state.
Or the woman who got pregnant, somebody said to her, oh, well, you got pregnant in order to live off of the state and live off the system.
That's right. And she was like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
You think that that's the life I want to live? A, filling out that paperwork 24 hours a day. B, getting the measly amount of money that they're giving me. C, living in a crappy apartment. Most low-income people want to move out and move up. They want to work. They want to have a house. They want to do good things. They want to give back to their community. And this idea that they're all just lounging around and happy-go-lucky, you and I wouldn't want to live in their shoes. We wouldn't want to be hanging out getting the local subsidy from our food bank and everything else. We would be like, no, this isn't good enough for me. This sucks. And are there some people who scam the system? Of course. But they are a minority, Mark. They are a small, small minority of people. And so that way of thinking does not help the situation. Because again, it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. We tend to then just stereotype everybody.
Right.
We're like, it's very easy to write those people off.
We'll continue our discussion with filmmaker Bess O'Brien right after this. At Red Hen Baking Company, they believe pure, uncomplicated ingredients in the hands of skilled artisans are the building blocks for great food. They're dedicated to creating the best food from the best ingredients. You'll find an ever-changing lineup of delicious pastries, sandwiches, and soups at their beautiful cafe off Route 2 in Middlesex, just off I-89. Their breads are also available in many other locations. Led by owners Randy George and Eliza Kane, Red Hen Baking Company has been on the leading edge of the local food movement since 1999. We'll get back to our discussion with filmmaker Bess O'Brien about her movie Just Getting By in a moment. First, we'll hear from Alicia, who's been living with her family in a motel in St. Johnsbury.
We've been here since April of 2021, so over a year. We were forced out of our housing at a day's notice. The apartment was condemned from landlord negligence, and we just couldn't be there with the kids, so we had to leave that day. And we are here.
Us girls sleep on the... Logan sleeps on the couch.
So we have some of the only adjoining rooms here. Every night it's like Tetris, because we still have to make sure we can get to doors and everybody's things are out of the way.
I'm making it.
There's 4 feet of counter space. There's no stove. It's a mini sink. I have 2 mini fridges. You are buying by the day or buying by every few days because you don't have the room to store it.
I don't take being in a hotel as a shame, but I'd much rather be living in a house. I don't really tell people where I live.
I don't tell people where
I
I
don't
live.
get asked that question.
Or if I do,
I say my dad.
Our family feels a lot of stigma living in the hotel, and I ended up attending a select board meeting where they were discussing closing it. I advocated for the folks living here. They outright said they don't want to hear from the homeless. Their solution is kick everybody out on the street, apparently, and that's not a solution. My husband works faithfully. I work. It's not all because of money or character. There's a lot of people here with families that are just trying to get by, that didn't ask for this. They thought the same thing coming in. I'm going to be gone soon. It'll be fine. This is temporary. And it's not.
that way. No.
We've applied to over 100 apartments and houses. It's really hard to even fill out those applications, which we do. We're one of the people that are absolutely, like, we're doing it. But in your heart, it takes a toll.
Back to our discussion with filmmaker Bess O'Brien, whose latest work is Just Getting By. There were a couple of things, though, that I found really encouraging. There are a lot of people out there willing to help.
That's right.
There are a lot more food shelves than I thought Vermont. Again, we are here in Burlington. That's not unexpected. But in the Northeast Kingdom, in Peacham, and everywhere else, I mean, seems as though there are resources out there in a lot more communities than I certainly was aware of. And I'm grateful to have learned that.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to sort of, I wanted to stream that sort of back and forth throughout the movie, because when we spent 8 months making this film, and we were all, and and we went to a lot of these food banks, and someplace like Martha's Kitchen in St. Albans, which I just loved. Though I would walk into these places and it made me so happy. I felt good because it was people who were very committed to their communities, who were volunteering for the most part, but some people working every day, feeding people, being there for people, creating spaces where people felt welcome. I mean, Martha's Kitchen is just this wonderful, 7 days a week, breakfast, lunch, anybody can come in, sort of like a nice diner, happy feeling. A lot of transient people who would come in off the street, but also people came every day. This was their place. This is where they connected, when they were alone in their apartment,
or even the people delivering the Meals on Wheels who, they would say, this is the only person that I see all week.
That's right. There are good things going on, and those things need to be duplicated 100 times. And we need to be doing that more with housing. I think that food, we've got more things in place, I think, to deal with people who are food insecure, like the Veggie Van Go thing that the Vermont Food Bank does that we have in our film, where, they work very closely with farmers, which is a great thing. So they get gleaned food, they get fresh vegetables, and they give this out to people. And you saw that line of cars. There was like 150 cars once a month. Or maybe it was twice a month. I can't remember. I think it was once a month that would come and get this. And these are, this is way after COVID. These are still people who are needing this help. But thank God it's there, because they get fresh vegetables.
Because it all goes around again in that circle. You talk about more stress, poor nutrition.
Yeah.
That means higher healthcare costs. It just all goes in this bad, vicious cycle.
Right. And why have we not learned? We know these things, right? We know if we feed people, if we house people, if we get people a good job and ground them with their kids, that they will be healthier. They will go to the hospital less. They will have less mental health issues, which, by the way, all of that costs money. In fact, it probably costs more money.
Right.
And so, you want to keep people out of the hospital. You want to keep people out of prison. You want to keep people mentally well so that we're not having to deal with a lot of mental health issues. And the way to do that is to make people feel like they have a purpose in life, that they are grounded, that they feel secure.
And have dignity.
And have dignity. Exactly. And that there's somebody, there that they can go and get some help if they need it, real help. So the money that would be put up front for housing, for food, would totally be worth it, because if we really committed to that big time over the next 10 or 20 years, I think you would see a lot of health issues, a lot of mental health issues, and a lot of, frankly, drug and alcohol and incarceration issues go down.
Tell me more what you learned about the hotel voucher program. We read about it every day in the news. Really, the stories seem to get reduced to there's this deadline coming up, and it's just a much more complicated, rich topic than that. So, what did you learn about the hotel voucher program that you didn't know before you went into your hundreds of hours of filming?
Well, I probably don't even know as much as you do because you're a journalist. But what I can say from a human perspective, just hanging out with these people, is just the toll that it takes on people to be constantly on a deadline and then told, oh no, we're going to give you another 6 months. Oh, well, actually, it's going to be 8 months. Oh, actually, no, we're going to move the date from. I don't even know at this point. 3 weeks ago, when we finished my movie, when we locked the picture, which was last October, the new deadline for kicking people out was April 15th. And then a month ago, there was a rumor that they were going to be kicked out on March 15th, which is today. I don't even know if that's true. What I would say is the complication, the bureaucracy, the constantly changing dates, the tentativeness of it all, the roller coaster ride for people is just, once again, it goes back to this thing. Stressful. And certainly.
And with kids.
And certainly, you've talked about this on your show. Many people have brought this up. The amount of money that has gone into those hotels from the state. Okay, I will give the state cred and understanding for when the pandemic struck and they need to get people indoors and they were just, look, we have this money, whatever the hotels, because I'm sure the hotels were not necessarily psyched to take all these people. So the hotel said, fine, give me $5,000 a night. And the state said, okay, fine, we're in a crisis, here's the money.
$5,000 a month.
$5,000 a month.
Yeah.
$5,000 a month for a room.
Yeah.
And some of the rooms were more than that. So fine. But the point is, then why didn't the state start negotiating the second year or the third year with these and bring these costs down and then use some of that COVID money to start building or creating something that would actually be there when the program stopped? There's a family, Alicia and her family, who are living in 2 rooms in this hotel in St. Johnsbury. I think they were both paying, the state was paying essentially $5,000 at least per room. And at one point, Alicia said to me off camera, she said, that's $10,000 a month. Why didn't they just give us the money and we could have gone and rented a house or, frankly, an Airbnb for our family instead of squishing us into we frankly could have found something for less than that. Are you kidding? $10,000 a month? That's like, Upper East Side, New York rents, okay? So, and then the guy at the end of the film, who's getting kicked out the next day is like, these guys have spent $60,000 on me this year. My God, that could have been a down payment on a house, whatever. So I think there was some real mismanagement somewhere along the line with all this money. And I'm sure that's why the governor now is saying that's it, because he's tired of dealing with it and he doesn't want to deal with it. And I get that. But there needs to be some understanding that we should have figured this out in a better way. And the hotels have made tons and tons and tons of money. They could have been said, look, okay, we've given you $5,000 the first year. We're going to give you $3,000 the second year and $1,000 the third year. Okay. I don't know. Why didn't anybody say those things?
But I can imagine some people listening to this are saying, well, so then the governor's justified in ending the program because
No.
there's all this money being spent. That's too much money to be spending.
Yeah. Okay. I get that, but the problem is that if you don't have any place to put these people, they're going to be on the street. And then my next question is, okay, why aren't you negotiating to stay? Then you got to figure out some other place with these people to go. And there really is. Where is that place? You have not put anything in place. I mean, once again, you haven't been planning for this 3-year end game. And so my question is, okay, so fine, we're saying that we're spending all this money, although I think at this point they could be probably offering the hotels less money, and they should be.
And I think they are.
And I think they are. But the other option is that, close to 1,500, 2,000 people are going to be out on the street? Is that what the governor wants the look of Vermont to be, which is more and more people on the street for our beautiful, perfect, wonderful state where we depend on tourists coming summer and that they're going to come into Montpelier or Burlington or, frankly, small towns and see homeless people walking all over the place? That's not a good optic. So I can't, what I don't understand is how the state can think that that is a good thing to do.
Or that offering people camping equipment is
Right.
that was, there are people that are saying, I don't want to live in a tent.
Yeah. Or like the big guy at the end, he's like, I can't even fit in a tent.
Yeah, I'm 6'6", 300 pounds. I can't fit in a tent. Yeah.
Yeah. So, look, are these easy fixes? No. But I think what I also saw in this film was like when the scene where Colby goes, one of the protagonists in the film goes to testify in front of the Montpelier town.
Yeah, it's a homeless commission.
This is when they were about to throw everybody out on March 15th. They ended up pushing that down the line, but at this point it was going to be March 15th. And, the city councilor guy says, look, there's going to be 400 people on the street, and the state is telling our the city of Montpelier that we're supposed to deal with these people. We don't have the budget. We don't have the people. We don't have, it's like the state has got to deal with this.
I actually, that was city manager Bill Frazier, and I understood what he was saying. He was saying, we can't magically come up with all this housing.
Yeah. We don't have the funds. And I guess the state can say the same thing, but the state has the ability to raise funds 100 times more than the little city of Montpelier does. They have a fixed budget. That's it, So, there's a part of it, all this, where I'm sure people can just throw up their hands and say it's all messed up. It's, it's a disaster. And that is true to a point. But I also think that there are, activists and people out there. Brenda Siegel is in the movie.
Yeah,
She's
no
been
kidding.
working on this for, 3 years that have ideas and have ways of going about this stuff. And we need to be getting those people into a room, and we need to find the money. We need to find the money because I just do not believe that the money does not exist somewhere. And we cannot just throw people because you think putting 1,500 people on the street, which I guess they're planning to do this April, is going to help the state of Vermont? That is not going to help. That is going to, people are going to get sick. They're going to go to emergency rooms. They won't be able to pay their bills. Hospitals will get screwed up. There's going to be more drug and alcohol. Tourists aren't going to want to come to Vermont. It's just going to, the series of cascading problems seem way bigger than just trying to figure this out. And, I don't know. I think that there are people out there who have some really innovative and good plans, and we just need to listen to them better. And I think we can find the money. I think we can always find the money, if we need to.
There seems to be a feeling that I get watching your movie and just being here in Vermont that, well, maybe these folks will just go somewhere else.
Yeah, okay. And how does that go with the governor and the state saying, we're losing people. We don't have enough people living in this state. We're losing young people. It's just going to be old people living around the cities and countryside. We need young people to come and work in our stores and work in our restaurants. Okay, so how does that connect with that argument, which is just fine? We don't want you. Go somewhere else. Okay, so you lose Colby in my movie. She goes to New Hampshire. There's lots of people who have left and gone other places. So you can't say at one end of the spectrum, we need people to come here and be healthy, abiding citizen and give back to our communities, and then say, but we don't care about you guys, just get out of here. To me, that's hypocritical.
Let's go back here just a moment. You and I are almost exactly the same age. You're actually older than I am, just to be clear. Ooh. But what I'm having difficulty understanding is that when you and I were growing up, I don't remember the problem being like this. And I don't know when it changed where older people, we had to worry about them being out in the streets, where there might have been in New York City issues of homelessness. Yeah. But it wasn't throughout everywhere in society. I mean, the homeless issue is now happening in every major city in America. Mm-hmm. As I think your movie points out, it's also in rural communities, too. It isn't just Burlington, Barry, and Rutland.
No.
And what I don't understand is how, are we frogs in the frying pan here, in boiling water? At what point did all of a sudden this become like, wow, we've got just this massive problem? Way too long a question, so.
Yeah, well, you can help me out with some of the answers because I bet you have some. I
can't identify really where it turned the curve here.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could go back to the basic bottom line that I think community has broken down, period. That I think people in the old days, if you want to just take Vermont, you lived in a small town, you went to high school, you lived in that small town, probably down the road from your parents.
And your grandparents.
Yep. And when your grandparents were sick, they came to live with you in the house, and people took care of each other better. You could go down that road.
Yep, that's fair.
I think that's true.
And a number of people in your movie talk about the idea of the loss of community.
The loss of community. I think since this whole new technology boom, I think people have become more and more individualistic in just symbolically, just constantly on their phone, just very tuned into their own world, their own, television station, their own news, their own whatever. There's less sense of taking care of people. Although, as you said in the film, that is still happening. God help us. It is still happening. And so that is a human instinct that is still there, thank God. And so we need more of that. We need to get back to more of that. It's like what you and I were talking about our kids, this afternoon about college. You used to be able to go to college for $2,000. Now it's $95,000. So the expenses, the housing costs, my kid lives in New York City. There's no way he can buy a house at the age of 31 in Vermont on his salary. You used to be able to do that. You used to be able to come back to Vermont and buy a little place. Okay? They had a thing the other day about some old guy who came here in 1942 in Vermont and bought 250 acres for $3,500. So fine. Things have gotten out of control with expenses. And we have not raised the minimum wage, and we have to the point where we really need to. And we have not provided universal child care. My God, we have not provided universal health care. I mean, these are things, okay, and people got sick when we were old, and we didn't have universal health care. Okay, fine. But it probably didn't cost us much to to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't know. That's not my bailiwick, but something changed there. So we haven't, once again, we've sort of ignored the basic human needs that people require to live a healthy life, and we just over and over again refuse to put those in place. And if you look at other countries around the world who have those things in place, their communities, their societies are so much more healthier. People are happier. They feel like connected to their communities. They're not dealing with all this stress. I mean, why are we disconnected? Because people are so stressed out, man. I mean, we live in a country where people are stressed constantly. Our mental health issues are huge. When you're under all of that, how can you connect to your community? How can you take care of anybody else? You're just worried about yourself, But if you feel like, okay, I have a pretty decent house. I'm not making millions of dollars, but I have a house. I have a car. My kid has child care every day that I don't have to worry about paying for. If I get sick, I don't have to pay for that. I've got a decent job. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm feeling like I can go over and have a barbecue with my friend, or walk down the street and feel safe, or give a little bit of money to the local, nonprofit organization, because I feel good about me. I feel connected. I feel grounded. I feel dignity. I feel like I have a purpose. I feel like I can look into the future and not be scared that when I stop working, I won't have any money, But if you keep many people in a perpetual state of stress, how do you give back to your community? How do you reach out to your community? It's way harder because you're just taking care of yourself, trying to get yourself through the day.
So obviously one of the goals of your movies, I was looking back, The Hungry Heart, I think was 2013?
Yeah,
God,
10 years ago, man.
I know. That was a fast 10 years. You've dealt with the foster care program. You've dealt with people. How do you make that transition of getting out of prison to come back into a society? Those are just three of the really difficult topics you've dealt with. So practically, what can happen as a result of my awareness being raised in this movie?
Yeah, well, what's the point of doing anything, really? There are days where you just feel like it's all too overwhelming. Why do anything? And I think as a documentary filmmaker, sometimes you can feel that way. It's like, am I going to change the world making this movie? No, I'm not going to change the world. But what I can do is I can hopefully get audience members into a room where they will hear the stories of people unlike themselves, walk out of that room, have a conversation that night, maybe the next day with their neighbor, think about it over the week, maybe say, maybe I'll go volunteer at that food bank down the road, or maybe I'll make a donation to what's-his-face, or maybe the next time I walk by that guy on the corner that I don't know, I'll just say hello, Does that change the world, Mark? No, but it makes a small difference. And it's better than nothing. And what are you going to do? Sit in the corner and you could do that. There are days when I do feel like doing that. But I also feel like in a world that is right now feels very off kilter, and there are so many universal issues that are beyond what I personally can affect. I can at least do something in my own community where I can raise the voices of people and give them a platform to tell their stories, and maybe even if you affect 3 people, hopefully it'll be more than that, to learn something, to have a moment of reflection about their own life, to think about their own prosperity versus other people's, to, just the fact that you went downtown after you saw my movie and you started looking at these people in a different light. That's good. That's good. So, I think that storytelling has been from day one. People have told stories. They've told stories in the caves. They told stories in the Renaissance. They told stories in the 1920s. We're not going to stop telling stories. Stories are, to me, the first step in understanding. Because if somebody can have empathy with somebody else, that is the first step to change. If you can't have empathy with somebody, you're not going to ever change your mind. Where I get my feedback of feeling like I did the right thing is when people come up to me over the years and they say, wow, I saw that movie on The Hungry Heart about, drug people struggling with substance abuse disorder. And I really had written those people off. But after I saw your movie, man, I get it. I totally understand. And I actually am donating some money to my local place. And I feel great. I feel like, wow, that is awesome. Or somebody who comes up to me and says, I saw your movie. My kid, I'm an upper middle class person, and my kid struggled with heroin for 3 years. And, I thought I was alone, and I came to your movie and I saw people who were going through the same thing. And I got connected with my local organization, to talk about what I was going through or whatever. And sometimes, like what happened with The Hungry Heart, the governor actually watches the movie and he says, oh my God, I think I'll do my entire State of the State on the opiate epidemic. And I'm going to actually ask you to come and I'm going to honor the people in your movie. And that, I do believe that was my 15 minutes of fame or whatever. That movie hit at the right time. The governor saw it. He pushed that issue. It became a front page story in the New York Times, and it pushed this state to grapple with that problem and did move a huge amount of legislation into place to help people who were struggling with drug addiction and get into recovery. And so good for me, good for the movie, good for the people, the amazing people in the movie who told their stories.
Amen.
Yeah. And is that going to happen every time you make a documentary? No. But I see it in small bits and pieces. And I also, I'll do a call out to the legislators. Legislators need to come to this movie. They need to be in the room with their constituents when this movie is playing and be part of the Q&A afterwards and talk to their constituents about these issues one-on-one after seeing this film. Is that change? Probably. Step up to the plate. Go to your community and really have the hard conversations, And I guess the last thing I would say is that I also feel like giving people a platform to tell their stories is also extremely cathartic and moves people forward in their own healing process. And especially people I have seen who have toured with my movies change. I mean, they come out of their shell. They thought they could never, be in front of an audience, and all of a sudden they're standing up there and they're telling their stories about being a heroin addict. It's like, whoever wanted to hear my story? And now they become an ambassador for recovery and moving forward. And that, I saw it happen in front of my eyes. Like, that was transformative for these people. So that gives me a lot of hope. So I guess I came up with quite a few things. I don't know. But no, is it going to change the world? It's not going to change the world. It's not even going to change Vermont necessarily. But it might move the needle a little bit. I don't know. We'll see.
Bravo.
Yeah.
That wraps it up for this edition of 802 News, sponsored by Red Hen Baking Company. Thanks for listening.